Let me write that down. I'm going to write down exactly what you said. Receivers broadcast before they deliver.
Before they deliver.
Okay? I'm going to put that on the stack and come back to it. Anybody else? Yeah?
So you just, everyone who receives the message you'll have appended like a list of all the process IDs that seen the message or delivered it, or starting with the sender. And then any process receives a message, it'll send it to everyone who hasn't seen it and append their ID onto the message.
Yeah, it sounds like the same thing, with a little bit of deduplication going on, right?
Well, that could end up in if you don't do that, you end up in an infinite cascade of people sending.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. So you're suggesting this, broadcast before you deliver. No, it wouldn't be an infinite cascade as long as you knew that the broadcast completed. You just don't do it twice. You just don't do this more than once or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Right, but then once you've delivered, you wouldn't broadcast anymore, so this seems fine.
But then you'd get it from someone else who broadcast it to you before.
Right, but you would already have delivered it. I guess we're splitting hairs here. But yeah, your thing sounded fine. I think the business about setting the metadata wasn't necessary because we were assuming everybody knew who everybody was. But your idea was it's the metadata, it's the running dynamic who's left to be disseminated. So yeah, that totally works. Do we have anything else that look different? This is great. This class is good. Everything else looked more or less the same? Yeah.
Perhaps the broadcaster A. So if B, or after it's broadcasting to everyone, it sends an acknowledgement out. And if one of them doesn't get the acknowledgement, then
wait, I don't understand. So who sends an acknowledgement and to
A.
whom?
So after it's sent it out to everyone, it sends an acknowledgement to it broadcasts an acknowledgement.
But that doesn't help, right? Because A crashed. And
Right. So since B didn't get it, B would take over the broadcasting duties.
Well, no, I'm not sure I understand. So when I get a message, I wait for another message from the same person. And if I didn't get another message from the same person, I do what?
You ask the original owner.
The original owner's dead.
Right. So that would prompt you to broadcast to everybody else.
Okay.
You're assuming that not everybody got the message.
So then in steady state, what that looks like is every time I want to broadcast something, Bob smells acknowledgement. Yeah. And then when does Bob deliver the message? When he gets the acknowledgement?
Yeah.
Okay, well, does that work though? Because this could have happened. I could have crashed before I sent it out.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm not sure that solves reliable broadcast. Yeah.
So the one thing I thought was, A sends a message to B and C, and basically every receiver is broadcasting an acknowledgement to every other node on the network. So suppose A sends a message to B and C, but A crashes before that one goes through.
Okay.
Yeah. Suppose
So B told everybody, hey, I got this message.
B told everyone they got a message. So did C. And
Right.
Right. And so now the thing is, when B gets the message, it's expecting a reply from everyone except for A. And if it doesn't get a message from C, then it will now broadcast that message back, or just send a unicast back to the places which did not send an acknowledgement to B. And that way, even if A is down, A doesn't need to receive that other message.
Yeah, I guess I'm beginning to be convinced that this could solve the problem. The feeling that I get is that this is going to be a lot less live than the other protocols, right? Because any situation in which I need to wait for an acknowledgement from everybody to know that something's true is not going to survive the loss of even one node. Whereas we want the system to tolerate the loss of nodes, just not to have the loss of nodes cause a violation of reliable broadcast. So I think this is fair. This solves it. But in some sense, this is better. Yeah.
I was going to say, couldn't the return, if B broadcast, if C broadcasts what occurred, and completely crashes between what it says to A and B, in the example you did?
This?
Yes.
Okay.
So C also broadcasts the message that it heard, and it sends, and B is listening for it, but it crashes, it sends it to A, but it's not it crashes before it sends it to B.
Well, so the thing is when I look at this picture now that I've drawn this, what I see is this plus all this other shit that I didn't need. Right? So like, it would appear that this solves the problem. And all this other stuff doesn't, and only makes us less fault tolerant. Yeah?
Wait, so by receivers broadcast, that means that they broadcast the exact same message that they received?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, with some kind of hysteresis, right, as you point out. Like, if they just, every time they get a message, they broadcast it, then our communication pattern will look like a problem. And I've implemented this protocol so many times, but it would look like this. It would be like, hey, cool, all right, that's great. And in fact, oh my God, it's gonna, you get the idea. So, you want some way of saying, in some sense, you have a modality. There's the, I have not delivered a message yet, and then there's like, I have delivered the message. And when you're in the, I have delivered the message, you're never gonna deliver it again. If you think about it that way, you say, so what do? Well, when the message comes in, you broadcast it, and then when you're done broadcasting it, you deliver it, and then the message comes in again, nothing ever happens again. And so it's probably the right way to think about it. And that picture looks like false. In steady state, it looks like this. No, we're done. Okay. Alice sent it to Bob and Carol. Bob went ahead and broadcasted it to Alice and Carol. Maybe you would suppress broadcasting back to the center. But let's keep things fully general. Carol broadcasted it to Bob and Alice. Now everybody's broadcasted to everybody in the stuff. What would it look like in the case that we were concerned about? It would look like this. A crashed after getting just one message out. The concern is that Bob, a correct process, is going to deliver that message, and Carol, a correct process, is going to not deliver it. But if Bob makes sure to not deliver it until he has disseminated it to everyone, that cannot possibly happen. Now we know that if a correct process delivers a message, it will deliver it. Now, some of you might be concerned, what if there was a Dan, and the same shit happened to Bob that happened to Alice? Bob crashed before he got his broadcast out to Dan.
The messages get sent.
That's fine. Well, Bob wasn't a correct process, right? He crashed. Now here's a mind bender for you. Is reliable broadcast a safety property or a liveness property? Call it out. Liveness. Some people think safety. Yeah, well. It's really controversial, actually. So I always taught this class, and I taught it was a safety property. Why did I say it was a safety property? Well, because I could draw the picture. I'm like, look, man, there's your problem right there. Look at it, like the finite execution, and like Alice is dead, right? So there isn't anything else going on in this Lamport diagram. Sure, maybe you could say these arrows go on forever, but nobody's ever going to do anything. So this execution is done, and we have a delivery. So we have a correct process to deliver the message, and we have a correct process who didn't deliver the message. But this might make you a teensy bit uncomfortable, because how do you know it didn't? I know, because I know when nobody's ever going to send a message. But in some sense, to say somebody didn't ever deliver a thing sounds like a liveness violation, right? So I always just glibly said it's a safety property and pointed at the picture. It said, find a picture. I had a student in the class last year who suggested the following. Well, you're saying Bob delivered it. Or let's just say he did deliver it. What if Bob crashed? Well, then Bob would be an incorrect process. And this wouldn't be a violation of reliable delivery. So are you telling me, when you say that this is a safety property and this execution is over, that you know that Bob will never crash? Because in some sense, with the definitions you've given us, Professor Alvaro, this execution is an incorrect execution only if this line goes on forever without a crash. And so I had to do some ham. I'm like, we'll probably have to go back and look, but probably when Ken Berman wrote this, or whoever it was that wrote this, they meant that a process was sort of decided by God to be correct or incorrect before the execution ever began. So you have to write, okay, Alice was an incorrect process, and Bob was a correct process, and Carol was a correct process, or you have to say Bob was an incorrect process. You kind of have to make that decision ahead of time. That's the only way I can make it work to be a safety property. So the bottom line is, your mileage may vary, these abstractions, sometimes map very cleanly to what we're trying to teach, sometimes not quite as cleanly. Yeah.
But for instance, say that A broadcasts to B, and then A crashes before sending to C, and then B gets the delivery. But between B delivering and sending from B to C, it crashes.
Yeah, that's
Then-
exactly the scenario. That would be okay, because then it would not be the case that a correct process ever delivered the message.
Yeah.
So P wouldn't be true. But the trick is that what this student said was, it would appear to me that I can always make a process incorrect because you told us that crashing was this unpredictable event that could happen at any time. So in some sense, it's never the case that we could say this process is like definitely going to be a correct process forever. That's just to confuse you. I mean, typically I would call this a safety property, but there's some subtleties in the definitions. Okay, how much time do we have? None? 1 minute?
2.
2 minutes, great. So I just want to make this real quick point, which is that these tricks that we looked at, they all involve making multiple copies of messages, right? It's like, oh, you might lose messages? Oh, here's a good idea. Make a couple copies of them. That way you'll have a few left over after you lose some. In the next class, we're going to look at replication. You already kind of looked at replication. Oh, you think your data might get lost due to a machine crash? Maybe you should put that data on a couple machines. What do these techniques have in common? They're all examples of redundancy. So I'm going to make this really strong point over and over again in this class, and I always do in my research talks too, that at least in the current state of the art, when we talk about fault tolerance, we mean exactly redundancy. Fault tolerance and redundancy are sort of two sides of the same coin. And as sort of a mental exercise for you all, see if you can think of any fault tolerance mechanisms that you've ever heard of in life that don't involve making a bunch of different copies. Now, the different copies are made in different dimensions, right? These copies exist in the dimension of time. We're trying a behavior more than once. Replication obviously exists in the dimension of space. We're taking data, we're putting it in a bunch of different physical locations far away from each other under some assumption of independence. We'll talk about this later. Error-corrected codes are mathematical redundancy. Write-ahead logs in databases are representational redundancy. Fault tolerance is always going to be redundancy with a huge caveat and footnote. What assumption am I making about what can go wrong that's making me say that every way to fix it is redundancy? What am I assuming is like the only thing that can go wrong? Loss! Who said that? Yes. Loss. In a world in which the only thing that can go wrong is things that can go lost, be lost, the only thing you got to do to fix it, and I'm not saying it's easy, is make multiple copies of things. If we were living in a Byzantine world, all that horseshit about redundancy doesn't really play out anymore. Now you have to, the remediation for something that could go wrong could be as varied and diverse as all of the things that could go wrong. Okay? Have a nice day.